So, I'm from the Digital Curation Centre, and amongst the things we do are producing stuff like that. Now, you're not allowed to ask me questions, but there's no rule that says I can't ask you questions. So I'm going to begin by saying, who here knows what the Digital Curation Centre is? Who's heard of us? Okay, that's reassuring, you know, that I need to do a bit less explanation about what we're about. I mean, we're there to help people deal with the problems of preserving digital content, of preserving it, of curating it, that's enabling other people to make sense of it, and reusing it. Our focus is on data, but really we're interested in digital content in the wider process. So there's a bunch of reasons I'm here. Part of it is around collaboration and identifying tools that can help generically with that process of making information curatable, preservable, reusable. We've identified some that are around. We know that there's lots more, so any more that we can add to our catalogue of tools we'd be interested in knowing about. We also have some generic tools which we're interested in shifting from things that you can download from our website and use yourself to services that we can make available in the cloud. So one of them is an example of their XArch, a generic database archiving tool produced by the database group here at Edinburgh that's geared towards the sort of data that we get in research, the sort of thing where your data model is changing all the time as you're going through that process of scientific inquiry, as well as the data. XArch is a very compact way of representing changing data and changing data structures and allowing you to roll that sort of stuff back. So identifying more of those sorts of things and what are the challenges in moving them into services in the cloud as opposed to software that you can download, and what sort of tools are ideally suited to that sort of online service model. How effectively can we use cloud-based services to do research data management more effectively? We know a little bit about this. We're funded to be doing a lot more about it over the next year, but I know there's a lot more expertise around those sorts of issues in this room, and I'm keen in making contact to help us do that. But we're also interested in picking up, and I think it follows on from one of the questions that was raised there about, you know, do we really need to keep everything? I mean, we certainly don't, and there's a couple of leaflets in your pack here that I think go a long way towards explaining some of these issues. Some work recently the Software Sustainability Institute has been doing with Curtis Cartwright around the issues of software preservation and data. This one on digital preservation and curation, and this one dealing with sort of another aspect of the problem, you know, the inheriting ancient bits of code, or indeed inheriting ancient bits of data, and the way in which those two things are related. Now, one of their conclusions is that whenever you can, if you're trying to maintain stuff for the long term, you ought to turn problems of maintaining software into problems of maintaining data. Data preservation in the long term is not an easy problem. I've had to be dealing with it a long time, but the assertion is that it's easier than maintaining software in the long term. Now, I can already see that not all of you necessarily agree with that, and I think that's something that we could usefully explore. How often do we actually need to maintain software as a working entity? How often do we simply need to maintain the knowledge of what software could do without actually being able to run it, simply so that we can understand what were people trying to do with this stuff when they originally collected it, and what were the limitations on what they could and couldn't do with that in the past. Often when you're trying to understand why people came to the conclusions they did, given that data was available to them, you need to understand the limitations of the technology they were using to analyse that stuff. Lots and lots of stuff has changed over time. I'm going to finish at that point and give you a spare minute back.
Thank you, Kevin.